Hey guys, Ricardo with Phastek Performance, and today I have a special guest for you guys. I got Mike from Roto-Fab. These guys have made some of the best intakes that we have known to and come and see with everything going on in this ever-changing world. Roto-Fab has really kind of made themselves a staple in the Camaro game with their intake systems. So I have, like I said, I have Mike here. He's joining us live here, right here. We got him going. Mike, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to really kind of talk to us, explain to us a little bit about the Roto-Fab. Now, one thing I want to kind of start is a little bit of a background on Roto-Fab. Mike, now you're kind of the core when it comes to the background of Roto-Fab. You did a lot of stuff in the past. You've been developing, working with these engineers, developing this and that. You've kind of taken that time, you've taken all that stuff and applied it into Roto-Fab. Can you give us a little bit of a background of what it takes to make Roto-Fab what it is?
Sure. I'd say first, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would start briefly with I've been a metal fabricator all of my life and started in the automotive industry, I would say in 1993, and went full time in the aftermarket automotive industry in about 97.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a good background in fabrication. In 98, I was hired by Lingenfelter Performance Engineering as a metal fabricator. And I'd say because of good luck and good timing, I was quickly able to move into the role of the lead fabricator at Lingenfelter's. And if you're familiar with their operation, one of the neat things is that they're a super high-end company. They tend to deal with people that aren't as price sensitive. So we were able to not only develop some top-notch products, but we were just able to spend the time to refine those products and really fine-tune everything to the best of its ability. And that often started on the chassis of a vehicle. Then the entire setup would go to a engine dyno. We would make brackets and all the things that we could run this same setup that was going in the car on the engine dyno, recognize any shortcomings, make changes, then go back into the vehicle and go on the chassis dyno. So all in all, it was just a unique experience to develop products and find all the small intricacies that we could pick up a little power and have the budget to do that. And it was somebody else's budget. So that was kind of handy.
Playing with someone else's budget, man, is always kind of fun. I mean, in my opinion, the different builds and everything that I've always kind of done in the past, I'll agree with you. Playing with someone else's budget is always fun. But it's interesting. I mean, you bring up Lingenfelter and myself growing up, man. I mean, Lingenfelter was king, back in the 90s when you were there. I mean, I don't know what it felt like to be there and be kind of seen as the guy in the background as part of this king of automotive. Lingenfelter. Anyone spit out that name with a build in their car, and it was just like, yes, wow, great. I mean, reading them in magazines and everything growing up was always great. Like I said, that name stuck around. So the fact that you were able to kind of spit off and do your own thing with that background of the detailed and details that Lingenfelter puts behind their name is great. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'd say one of at the time period I entered there to what you were speaking of, the LS motor had just been introduced. We were campaigning an HRA Pro Stock truck, and we were also developing the twin turbo packages for the C5 Corvette. So simultaneously, I was able to work on NA stuff and all the small things that make a difference in NHRA racing, which comes down to thousandths of a second. So a small change in an entry, small change in tubing size really made a huge difference. And I was able to pick up that knowledge, at the same time be able to build intercoolers and ductwork for turbo applications and really understand what goes into an air intake for both the turbo and the supercharged applications. So just a super time to be involved in it.
Man, I mean, kind of talking about that time, that's when a lot of people really kind of, fabricators, engineers, you all really kind of dove into a lot of things. I mean, I was a little kid, like I said, little kid reading those magazines with Lingenfelter name all over it. And just to know that you were there as part of the foundation that really kind of built it really strong in the 90s. It's awesome to hear I'm very happy for you that you were actually there at that time, because to me, that's amazing. That's kind of, just like I said, top notch, right up there. But it's good to hear that you're part of that team that really kind of developed a lot of stuff that we use now. I mean, even now, there's a lot of stuff that was done back then, guys, that we still kind of apply. It's just more refined now to obviously the different models and stuff like that that go along with development of the products and everything that goes into line. So it's awesome. The foundation was there. It's solid. It's very, very well done. Apply it to where we need to, and that's what happens. So good deal, man. Good deal. But okay, well, going on into developing something. Okay, you guys took the time, you took a factory car, you might have taken it apart, you've done all this stuff to where you're able to apply what you know and what you do into developing something. So what kind of testing takes place when developing something like an intake?
Okay, so for us, it's I'm sure it's different than any company out there in terms of the extent that we go through. So we start out generally by buying the vehicle, which for us it's a way to drive, get to know the vehicle, all the little ins and outs, and just like your daily driver,
Hmm.
you understand if it's an automatic, you know what it feels like on that shift point between first and second, and all the little things that happens in that car when it's stock. Okay, so from there we develop an intake, and our intakes generally start out as a hand-built intake. We build it to the car, just like the experience I've had before. We build it to the car, make sure it fits the car, make sure we're maximizing the space, using all the space that's available. And then we start testing. And
Hmm.
I would say we're looking at drivability, obviously no check engine light, not setting any codes. And overall, what would our customers think? Do they like the appearance? Do they like the sound? Do they like the performance? And one thing I would say is that when the drivability is good and we're not setting a check engine light, that doesn't mean we're done.
Yeah.
That's really the starting point, because just the fact that a no tune intake to me, doesn't mean that simply you don't set a check engine light,
Hmm.
because that's no guarantee that you're making power or even maintaining power. So what we're doing is we're maximizing the performance through all the different RPM ranges and all different loads with the stock calibrations. So to use the word in a different way, I don't want to mislead and say that tuning is involved, but we're actually fine tuning our air intake system
Hmm.
to the calibration of the car. And
Okay.
when you think about all the loads and all the RPM ranges and all the things that happen, all the dynamics of driving, that's really a tough thing to do across the spectrum. So if you're not careful, it's easy to maybe pick up power on the high end and
Hmm.
then run into some problems on the low end and some drivability issues and so forth. So it's really an extensive process to develop an intake in the way that we do, and that's why we typically need to own the car. We often put over 10,000 miles on an application with just our intake.
Hmm.
And one other thing I would say is that we almost always go long beyond the product that we end up with. In other words, we may start out with, we end up with 25 different variations.
Hmm.
And after number 25, we may go back and say, okay, it was revision 19 that made the most power, because if you don't keep going and keep trying to improve, you never know when you've really done your best. So eventually we look back and we say, okay, that one was our best. And that's what
Yeah.
we release.
That's cool, man. I mean, that's cool. I mean, he said it right there for you guys. They go through about 25 revisions and then go back and possibly pick the best one that they saw. So I know when the sixth gen came out, and I know the only reason I bring up the sixth gen is because I've been dealing with Roto-Fab really kind of since then. I know when the sixth gen came out, they told us they had it, they were working on it. They weren't the first ones out for the intake, okay? I'll admit it. And it's not about being the first, okay? But it's about providing the product that you know is going to be one of the best. And to hear Mike say that they went through an X number of revisions before they released it, it makes sense because When the 6th gen first came out and you guys came out with your intake, I know I probably hounded you guys a little bit. Hey, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? People are waiting. We saw the forums, we saw all the pages, we're all over the place. When's it coming? When's it coming? When's it coming? And you guys held off. You held off. You held off. No, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Then when you released it, it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. So it's been one of the better selling intakes, obviously, on our end for us, and obviously, probably, hopefully, for you guys as well. But it's been a great intake that's done a great job, and I'm honestly kind of happy you guys waited till you all were happy with it to go that 100%. Here it is, we're good, and go from there. So that's good.
Now, here's the thing, Ricardo. When release an intake, and the 6th gen in particular was a little frustrating because months before we released it, and we do a little testing, I think everybody does, but we really felt like we had the best product on the market, but it still wasn't quite where we wanted to be. And for our customers, we want to be able to release an intake and we want it to be the best that we can do, and we want to look for the things that can cause us trouble down the line. And that's why when you look back at our history and the intakes that we have on the market, when the dust settles and all the comparisons go away and everybody's moved on to the next product, we're still selling these products, but that's why Roto-Fab is often almost always recognized as being one of the top in that category. So we don't want to be the first to market and then be that intake that somebody uses to get by until the good one comes out. We want to be the other way, and we get the calls that, hey, I went with this, I knew I shouldn't have, and should have waited, or I went with this because it was a little cheaper. And so we get those calls, and we want to be that guy on top.
Mm-hmm. Understand. We get those same calls, Mike, where our guys are talking to someone. They went with this other intake for whatever reason, be it cheaper, be it readily available, maybe right now, maybe there's just a little bit of a backlog for whatever reason. I went with this one right now. I should have waited. I should have gotten the one I really wanted. And then then they end up with double intakes, and which is not a problem because you can always sell the other one. But at the same time, it's one of those things. If you had just waited maybe an extra week, maybe an extra 2 weeks, you would have gotten the one you wanted and wouldn't have had to go through the hassle of going through swapping intakes, worrying about selling the other one and going through that. So the fact that these guys took their time, guys, is really kind of something that plays into everything, not just the immediate result. They want the long term, not just the immediate. So it's something to think about. So good deal. Hats off to you guys for that, Mike. Now, doing a little bit more testing. Now, before I get into this question, I want to kind of lay it out, dyno testing, okay? I want to kind of lay it out for you guys that are watching. I want to let you know that Mike and his team probably use a dyno as more of a tool than a numbers game, okay? Guys in Mike's, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys in Mike's situation, y'all use the dyno as more of a tool to measure your air fuel ratios, measure everything that from here and there. You put loads on the dynos. So it's really, the dyno is something more of an engineering tool for their application as compared to the guys that are out there making the power and making the number. Then we'll just want to know what they go from there. So it's a little different. So Mike, I guess the question is, do you guys incorporate dyno testing with y'all systems?
We do, and as you were saying, the testing is a tool. It's often, for us, a little, we lean on it a little less than we do the overall street driving and the data logging. And the reason for that is we know what we're looking for, especially with these GM platforms, and we know the numbers we're looking for at given RPM ranges. We know the air fuel ratios we're looking for. We're really monitoring this stuff closely. And when we go on the dyno, to be honest, we very seldom get surprised on the results. So dyno testing is huge in our industry. And most of our business comes from all the tuners and the shops around the country that do dyno testing. And those are people that can buy whatever intake they want. Mm-hmm. And
open game.
And they often choose ours, and that's because they're doing their own dyno testing, and they want to put out the best product they can as part of their package. So dyno testing is an important part of our business. I would say it's not an important, it's more of a confirmation role with our development process.
There you go, guys. There you go. So yes, they probably stick the car on the dyno and they want to see what kind of numbers. So that's probably, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong here, getting the final numbers off of their intake is probably something that's done at the end of the day, as compared to something that's leading up to the end of the day. So you have everything that takes process and everything you put in place and goes from there. And then the last thing you want to do is get your numbers, because that's your final intake, that's your final revision, final version of it. Here you go. Now we get our number and go from there. So okay, that
right,
works.
Right, you're exactly right.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so that kind of covers a little bit of the testing, the process of making sure an intake goes into it. So you guys have your revision, and like you said, it was kind of hand built. You have your revision there. Let's say it's number 20 revision. You're going, and then now you're like, okay, well, now we got to kind of get into production, which is where I'm assuming the Roto-Fab name comes from, which is rotoforming. What exactly is rotoforming? For those that don't know, what's the process of it? How is that something like that taking place? So what is rotoforming?
So rotoforming, often called rotational molding, is a low pressure molding process, which the mold works on a biaxial rotation. So what happens, the mold mounts to a shuttle. We put a given amount of plastic resin in the mold, closed it up, and it's mounted to a shuttle that turns on a biaxial rotation, meaning it turns this way and it's turning on an axis perpendicular to that at the same time. So it's doing this continuous turning, and that shuttle goes into an oven where it cooks, say 500 degrees for a given amount of time, let's say 25 minutes. And what happens is the plastic coats the inside of that mold, forming a hollow part, as opposed to injection molding, where you have a male and female plug and you inject or push that plastic in. Okay. So the part molds, it melts, it comes out of the oven, continues rotating as it cools and solidifies, and then the part is demolded and then goes through all the processes of finishing the part.
Okay. So kind of touching on the roto molding, that to me, just kind of what you're describing, it kind of sounds like a very big machine that you guys have to deal with, for all the pieces and that y'all develop and make. So how big of a machine is something like that? Is it like 10 by 10, 10 by 20?
Well, no, this machine we actually, this machine is actually the machine that we use for our ductwork on air boxes. Is a smaller machine, and it's maybe 6 foot cube, roughly. So what happens is we have multiple shuttles that go into this thing, and the reason we went with a smaller oven, and I think we had a larger oven maybe the last time we talked, that's because of the cycle time variations that we have. It worked out better to feed in more parts from multiple directions than to try to run many parts in one batch.
Okay. Cool. That's cool. I mean, that's a little tidbit behind, what it takes to you guys can see the intakes he's got behind him, what it takes to make that elbow, and, how it works. So it kind of gives you guys a good idea what exactly roto molding is, what Roto-Fab kind of stands for. So it's cool name, cool that they developed everything through that process. It's an interesting process. Maybe one day, maybe we'll take a facility tour. Who knows? So we'll see about that. But moving on, heat dissipation is always something that is, it's always a name of the game. Okay, it's always a name of the game. You have this intake sitting under the hood and it's developing heat. It's just collecting heat from the engine bay. Yes, your car's moving forward, and a lot of that heat might be coming out, but then you stop at a light, you stop at the store, wherever, and that heat is just going to build right there. Now, how does, I guess, rotoforming, does it have any benefit for heat dissipation? Does that help, with guys that are trying to achieve certain numbers, and the heat maybe from the intake system is just kind of affecting? Does rotoform help in any way?
So we're talking about two things. One of them is heat transfer and the other is heat soak. So heat transfer means that the heat that's moving from the outside of the tube and how it's transferring to the inside of the tube and into the airflow. Whereas heat soak deals with everything becoming the temperature of the under hood temperature. So as a part heat soaks, for example, the rotational molded part, it heat soaks slower, meaning for drag racing and so forth, the tube has not heated up while you're staging in many cases.
Okay.
However, either part, whether it be metal or plastic, once that heat soaks, then you're dealing with heat transfer. How quickly does that material transfer heat from the outer wall to the inner wall? And plastic does that very slowly. If you ever wonder about it, all you have to do is put your finger on top of a piece of thick plastic, light a lighter under it, and see how long it takes to burn your finger. Now try that with a piece of 16th inch aluminum, and your finger will be burning very quickly. So the same concept, this transfers heat poorly. So the amount of heat getting picked up by the air going to the motor is less versus, say, an aluminum or steel tube that transfers heat very well. It's constantly transferring that heat from the engine bay to the inner wall. That air is constantly picking up that heat going into the motor, and then it's trying to equalize. You pulled the inner wall, now it's absorbing the heat, and the whole process continues. So metal tubes will transfer heat at a much higher rate than the plastic. It's an important thing, not as important as, say, a large gap in an air box, but it's a very important thing.
See, that's kind of some good information, guys. I mean, he's very true when he says that a metal tube will conduct more heat than the plastic. I know I've dealt with it when various cars under the hood. Always the systems with the plastic tubes, you really they don't affect a whole lot as much as like a metal tube. And it all depends on your application too. This is not, something that just going to apply to everyone and everything. If your underhood temperatures are conducting a lot of heat because you got a big motor, you got a big cam, you got a big supercharger, you're creating a lot of heat, then that all that stuff kind of plays a factor into it. So if you're chasing a number, you're trying to get to that point, obviously having everything backed up the way you want it is really where you want to be. But this kind of gives you a little bit of insight as far as how he goes. And honestly, that intake tube that he's got there, the fact that it's that thick really kind of helps out. It's really something that's going to benefit you guys in the long run, for trying to keep that heat dissipation down as much as possible when compared to something like a metal tube or something like that. So hats off to you guys for using something that thick, because I'll back that up. And like I said, it's very nice, very simple. And the thickness, honestly, you guys use one of the thickest material that I've come across out of all the years of doing this. Hats off to you guys for using something that thick, because that just helps your intake systems. Let's see here. So kind of moving on. We've talked about little heat dissipation. We talked about, the forming of the systems. Now, Mike, do you all systems, now we talked about, dyno testing and went everything from there. Do you all systems require a tune? Now, I know with that question, there's a couple little open-ended because y'all have the Big Gulp series, which I also have here to kind of cover for you guys as well. But the standard systems, let's just say something simple and easy. Do they require a tune? I know you guys probably looked into it, but let us know, how things kind of work out with you guys and where it goes from there.
Okay, on our standard systems, as we talked a little before, they're not only, they don't require a tune, but the intake itself is built in such a way that it's tuned to the stock calibration. So we're taking the stock calibration and the parameters that we're working with, and we're developing a system that gives you the most power possible with the stock calibration. So definitely does not require a tune, and we get the calls that people will kind of generalize, okay, I understand most air intakes will set a code, and I will stop them right there and say that may be the case, but our intake will not set a code. In fact, not only does it not set a code, you should be in the happy spot for your engine management system. So if you set a code, we probably have a breather hose off, our MAP sensor is not installed completely, the screws tightened. There's something, and you shouldn't be setting a code with our intake, and we're going to help find the problem. We're going to find the problem because it's not going to be hard to find.
Yeah. Like you said, guys, I mean, there's I've never had a standard Roto-Fab system that has spit off a check engine light and with everything being 100% perfect. I've never come across it. Like you said, there's always going to be something that's might be a little off, so the system is probably going to pick it up. The MAP sensor, so he kind of covers on that. If those screws aren't tightened down, that MAP sensor is not sitting just right, that thing's going to cause a check engine light potentially, and really kind of go from there. Maybe the connector just didn't make a good connection for whatever reason. Who knows? There's a little bit of variables with that, but definitely it's something that with the Roto-Fab system, never had to get a tune at all. I've installed the V6 kits, SS kits, ZL1s. I mean, I've installed them all, so I know how they all kind of work. And trust me, they're all very simple. Every car I've done out of our shop here, it's always gotten the intake, went on its way, never had a problem after that. So it's really something that is a tune required with the Roto-Fab system, not on a standard system. So you guys don't have to worry about anything other than bolting it on and driving down the road. Now, with that said, Roto-Fab does have their Big Gulp series. Okay, now their Big Gulp series, those are for the big boys. Those are for the guys that want to make some power. Okay, now a Big Gulp series, would it work on your NA build and stuff like that? Yeah, but it will require a tune. So those is something I want to kind of cover, so that way you guys know, for you guys making the big power and needing the Big Gulp series, how did the Big Gulp series kind of come into development, Mike, and really kind of go from there? And what makes these intakes require a tune?
Okay, I'll start with one thing that we don't offer any Big Gulp series for an NA application as of now. We
Okay.
get the calls, they're just not a high enough demand for that right now. So all of our Big Gulp series are designed for supercharged applications. And what happens, we develop all of our intakes to perform well with the stock calibration, and then we know that modifications are going to come, either now or later they're going to come. So our intakes are designed to allow you to grow in power, but you reach a threshold, and with the 6th gen ZL1, it's about 650, 675 horsepower, where the intake size starts becoming a restriction, and that's where you can benefit from the Big Gulp series, which is basically an intake for the same application, but the ductwork is larger. Everything's larger to accommodate additional airflow. And those systems will always require a tune. And I will explain why with we just released our 5th gen ZL1 Big Gulp intake, a really nice intake, but I'm going to show you, this is our standard MAP housing for the ZL1, the 5th gen ZL1. And this is our Big Gulp series MAP housing. So you can see the difference in diameter.
It's definitely big.
So what happens, it's a substantial, about 21%. So what happens, if you can see I'll hold this up, you can see my pen. The end of my pen is the mass airflow sensor and where it's reading the air. And this is on any vehicle, but this is part of what we have to deal with when we're developing these intakes, is that mass airflow sensor is reading on the very tip of that pin, and it's reading that airflow going across it. And then it's using a calculation through the PCM. So it's going to say, okay, and these aren't real numbers. I'm going to say, I'm reading 1 cubic foot of air. And so the calibration in the car or the tune says, I know this tube is X amount in diameter or volume. So by knowing that sensor is saying 1 cubic foot of air, I know that we're moving 100 cubic feet of air through that tube. So what happens when you introduce the larger tube and you're doing the same thing, you're reading that air sample, and now your computer is still saying I'm moving 100 times that amount of air, when in fact it's moving 121% that amount of air. So what happens is that the injectors are told how much fuel to add by how much air is coming in. So by under-reporting the airflow, such as what happens with this larger tube on your stock calibration, for example, you're under-reporting the airflow, so you're getting more air. You're still adding X amount of fuel, thinking this is a smaller tube. So then you're creating a lean condition, which can be dangerous for your motor. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope that makes sense to you.
No, it makes, I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense. You know, I mean, I have the little bit of background to understand kind of what you're talking about, but I think that you explained it very well to let these guys know that, hey, this is kind of what goes on, you know, for really, and like you said, it really kind of happens with any application. That map sensor is reading, you know, your Chevy Sonic. All of the cars kind of have it. You know, your Tahoes, your Silverados, and stuff like that. You have all that stuff. So they're all kind of there, but he's basing his applications obviously to the Camaro and really kind of benefiting from there. And I do want to go back and say Mike is correct. They don't have a big gulp for NA application. That's my slip up right there. So just want to let you guys know it's all boosted applications that they have. Like you said, the 5th gen Z01, you guys are getting a big gulp, obviously here pretty soon. But that's kind of the big gulp series that Roto-Fab has done and what you all have developed it. So for you guys that are out there trying to make the big number, you might want to look at an intake. Like you said, the fact, you know, their intakes are good, but there's always a capping point for really kind of everything. So the big gulp behind it, really kind of nice intake system to kind of get you that extra little power. Okay, so
I was really amazed at how the big gulp system for this 6th gen Camaro, the amount of people using it and getting great numbers with it has really been exceptional. And that's one of the reasons we decided to go back to the 5th gen, because along those lines, we're getting the calls about the 5th gen. So the 5th gen is available now, and we expect the same reception for it as time goes on.
There you go, man. The 5th gens, I mean, honestly, I love the 5th gens, and the reason why is because those are kind of cars, and Mike can probably back me up on this. Those cars, the 5th gens, be it a Z01 SS, those cars they love horsepower. They love making the extra little horsepower, the extra little bit here or there. Like you said, that big gulp is really kind of, you know, benefiting very well for those 5th gen guys, and that's great because the LSA motors, in my opinion, they loved the air. They love a nice high flowing intake. If you can get as much air in those cars as you can, they're gonna love it. So it's one of those things that's really kind of benefiting your 5th gen Z01 guys. It's gonna benefit you guys when you're after and you're chasing that number. It's gonna be great, trust me. So now moving on from intakes, Mike, I know because I've been dealing with you guys for years, and you kind of mentioned a little earlier that you guys do metal fabrication, and you all kind of really start from there, and then you get into the roto molding from there for the final products. But I know other than intakes, you guys make other products. It's not just Roto-Fab is not just an intake company. They do make other products, you know, for aesthetics or for different looks and different things here and there. So they apply basically their foundation and they apply it to other products. Now, what are some of the other products that Roto-Fab makes? You know, what else is your team constructing at y'all's facility?
It's interesting you bring it. Roto-Fab came from, and our shop is still this way, is from about half of it being rotational molding and roughly half of it being metal fabrication. So the name Roto-Fab came from those two things. We started out with aluminum engine covers for the LS motors. So not only Corvette, Camaro, custom LS3 applications, LS3 swaps are huge. They're very popular now. So our largest selling cosmetic cover is the custom LS3 engine covers for those engine swap applications. So we offer plenum covers to go with those covers, and both the 5th gen Camaro market, the Pontiac G8, believe it or not, we still sell a few of those. And moving forward into the 6th gens, it just didn't have it. We played with some designs on engine covers. We just didn't come up with anything we liked. We do have a really neat looking cover for the coolant reservoir, which kind of sticks up in a pink color, kind of front and center. So we have a nice cover for that. And we want to expand more into the cosmetics, but the air intakes just always seem to keep us super busy in the shop. So we don't have the time to allocate to that we'd like, but we'll see what this year brings.
That's good to hear. So if there's you guys out there that are looking for something and you like the Roto-Fab brand, you have their intake, but maybe you don't have a couple of their other pieces. Like you said, they do have their engine covers for the 10 to 15 SS. So for you guys out there, I know they also have the radiator covers for the 10 to 15 SS. So if you guys are doing a lot of shows and stuff like that, there's also that kind of covers and kind of hides a whole bunch of stuff, which is really cool because it gives it a nice, clean, even look under the hood, which is really kind of something a lot of car show guys really kind of go for, because you want that clean look. Maybe you want it painted under the hood. It helps the judging and really kind of goes from there's a lot of that goes into it on the back end. But I'll team up with you, Mike, and say yeah, the sixth gen. There is just even on our end, with different manufacturers, it's hard to really find something that or develop something that's going to come out looking nice in the way you guys want it. And going through 20 some odd revisions on an intake can take some time. So getting you guys dialed in on that, I'm sure it keeps you guys a whole lot busy, and maybe taking on another project is just not in the cards just yet. But hey, who knows? We'll see. We'll see what comes down the line from you guys. So my last question, Mike, my last question, and I know this has always kind of been an important side. Dealing with you guys has always kind of been an important thing that you all have kind of wanted to maintain, and that's made in the USA. It's always kind of been Roto-Fab's one thing that they've always kind of said we're made in the USA. Now, it's a key point for your brand. So, how important is it to keep your products made in the USA?
Well, it's super important. And especially since if you look at the background of our company, we started out with absolutely nothing and working in the evenings to build a business and working full time during the day. So we were, in that sense, living the American dream and starting from nothing and building into something. So we've used American ingenuity and American knowledge and skilled craftsmen from America.
Yeah.
I just couldn't see taking, this country has allowed my family to do this and to build this business. I can't see selling out to China, for example. And we get the emails. You guys do some of your own manufacturing. You get the emails every day that we can build the molds for you, and would love to quote this or that. But I think that this country, and not to get into politics, but we need to do more of keeping our ideas and our manufacturing in this country and kind of get back to what we used to do. It's a little old school, but I think that there's still the opportunity for people to go from nothing, especially with the internet, to be able to decide that they're going to do something with their life and start a business. And this country still allows you to do that, but that window is getting more and more narrow as it gets tougher to compete with the products that are coming in. So and I would say that our employees too, the people that we have, they take so much pride in their work, and they're really talented, and they care about what goes out the door. And I don't want to let that go. If something, if we're getting compliments from some of our customers, I want to go out and share that with the people, and it makes them, it kind of reinforces their point of view on keeping quality up where we need to keep it. Conversely, if I run into a problem with something, I want to be able to go out and talk to that person. I don't want to have to send an email across the pond and then deal with that. So we're staying right here, to make a long story short.
Gotcha. I can completely agree with you on that one. If things were done here, there might be a big change to everything kind of going on in our world. But I'm very happy to hear that you're doing your best you can to keep everything here. Obviously, to keep the employees and everything staffed at your facility, because I know after dealing with you guys, I've been dealing with Roto-Fab for years, guys, and to see where they've gone when I started, to see where they are now, it's honestly, it's great, because it's one of those success stories that you really don't hear, very often. They started from nothing, working, like you said, working nights, trying to get everything going, and then keeping his day job and going from there. So I'm pretty sure 10 years ago, you were probably exhausted and you couldn't really, am I going to do it? We're going to keep doing this. And now look at you. Now you're taking off. Everyone loves your systems. Nothing but good things have come out of y'all's facilities since then. So hats off to you guys, definitely.
Thank you very much.
So that's it. That's what I got for you guys. Again, Mike with Roto-Fab, we've kind of gone over everything as far as, let's see here, what takes place. The little bit of bio, he's been with Lingenfilter, so he tossed that big name out there, all the development and everything he helped with them, applied it to his products that he's making now. So you have all the dyno testings, everything that really kind of goes into rotoforming a system, what it takes to be Roto-Fab, and really everything that they offer. The intake systems, yes, that's what they're known for. It's what they do. It's their day in and day out. But they're not only available for that stuff, they are available for other things. They do fabricate their other items, engine covers and stuff like that. So it's something that you guys might want to go take a good look at. If you're interested in anything else other than their intakes, have a look at it. I highly suggest it. You're going to get the same quality out of their intake that you are out of a produced part that they have to make themselves by hand. So it's really something to take a look at. But Mike, I want to thank you for joining us, man. It's always great talking to you guys because you guys have filled with knowledge, and as you guys can see, Mike is filled with knowledge. He's got a whole bunch of stuff on his rap sheet that's probably inside his head. But it's always good talking to you, Mike. Yeah, thanks again for joining us, man. I mean, going over all this stuff, it's really been very interesting, very fulfilling as far as my end.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, Ricardo, and I'm sure we'll do it again sometime. I'll be looking forward to it.
Definitely, man. Again, thank you guys for watching. If you would like any more information on Roto-Fab products, go ahead and click the link in the description. And like he said, hopefully we'll do this again so we can fill you guys' heads with more information about Roto-Fab products.